So certainly a lot of executive orders on the table. Holden, have you seen kind of what's going on there, or?
I mean, I haven't seen too much about it. I listened a little bit, but it's kind of hard whenever you got a mower or something going on in the background. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
I gotcha. Carson, how about you?
Yeah, I haven't seen anything specific, but I know certainly that's how most presidents actually do a lot of their first 100-day stuff is they do a lot of executive orders, and I know he's probably going to do one on TikTok, so.
Yeah, no, exactly. I see a lot coming. But hey, everyone, welcome to Youth Bombs. I'm Craig,
I'm Holden.
I'm Carson.
and we're the voice of young conservatives in Alachua County. As we were just discussing, President Trump on Monday, today is Sunday, the day of recording, will be signing many executive orders, upwards of 200. So action could include an emergency at the border, designating cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, and more. But why don't we start from the top? How do we feel about the emergency at the border? Is that something that makes sense to declare, or do we not see it that way?
I mean, while I generally disagree with, more restrictionist immigration policy, I think it makes sense. There's obviously a lot of problems at the border. There's a very big problem with just having an open border in general. So I don't think that specific policy, when it comes to, the more restrictive immigration policies found in Trump's agenda, of all of them, I don't think that one seems very, wrong at all.
Okay.
Well, what is he going to do? That's the question. So what does the emergency entail? Like, what actions is he going to take? We have an emergency right now. The immigration system is broken. So we have to fix it. And we have to simplify it dramatically and make sure that we enforce what we want to enforce. You're going to speak the language. You're not going to be a criminal, etc. So that's what we need to make sure is done. Because what's going on right now is ridiculous. If you go look at the border, the southern border, I mean, it's just insane. And it's simply because of the way that the government has set up the system.
Interesting. Yeah, and there would certainly be a lot entailed with that. So reinstating Remain in Mexico, for instance, having the military construct more of the border wall. So a lot of reversals of the Biden-era policies. So I think that action will delight the base and enrage the opposition, but that's to be expected. Though regarding all these executive orders, I think there have been questions about, is that the president's role? Is that something that should be done executively, or do we need more collaboration between the legislature and the president on this?
So I would say generally, if we're talking like probably 1990s, maybe even 2000s, yeah, I would agree with you that like there's so much overreach done with executive action, but it's gotten so like gridlocked that it's really impossible to get so much done without executive action.
I think the precedent was kind of set with Bush, if I'm not mistaken, and with the executive orders, and it's not, given who our presidents are in the executive branch, I'm not a big fan of it because generally it's worse than the alternative.
But don't you think, given that, say, the lack of action that can come from Congress, or the fact that certain things just have to be done executively, right?
The lack of action is a good thing. The problem is they're doing too much. So
I generally agree with that.
But I think the other thing is like the framers meant for us to have a separation of powers. So if we're talking specifically from the constitutional standpoint, I don't think the way the system currently works is good at all. I think the issue is that our Congress just doesn't want to get anything done. They want to argue with each other. They want to fight over the most basic things when realistically they should be agreeing on 85 to 90% of policies.
That'd be nice if we could get stuff done that benefits the American people, not just pass stuff for the sake of passing it, but actually, get genuine good legislation done. Because oftentimes the less they do, the freer we are.
Yeah.
But I think looking at what the executive orders can do, it really depends on, is this the role of the executive, or is this the role of the legislature to collaborate on? For instance, it wouldn't make sense and would be unconstitutional for Trump to just go executive order, we're abolishing the income tax. You have to go through Congress to do that.
income tax is not constitutional in the first place. In the original Constitution, Congress could not tax income.
Well, it's by definition constitutional.
Right now,
you're right. It
is.
shouldn't be
in the original Constitution until we got the 16th Amendment in 1913. Did they make it that way? But it's not supposed to be that way.
But-
so, I mean, an executive order to get rid of that would be amazing if you could. I don't know if you could do that by executive order, but if you could, I would do that immediately.
You definitely can't. You have to go through 3/4 of the state legislatures, which is why overturning the income taxes is never going to happen. The issue becomes, in my opinion, with all of this executive action, when it feels like it infringes on the states, right? We have a federalist system. These big federal programs shouldn't be encroaching on the states. And I think one of Trump's programs is a very obvious example of that, where he wants to use the military to go into these different states that he, says have sanctuary cities or whatever and are harboring illegal immigrants. And he wants to weaponize the military to go in there and catch these people and deport them as part of his plan for mass deportations. How is that states' rights?
Well, I mean, the federal government has to control immigration policy. So I think that makes clear sense in that you're not going to have Texas have one immigration policy and Tennessee have another. But I just see what you mean in that, yes, it could feel overbearing in that regard where should it be the military? I think they could have some role in it, but to be the ones going door to door, I think that's more of an ICE thing, not necessarily like our men and women in uniform. I think that they can assist in some manner, provide logistic support, but not be the ones going house to house. But Holden, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is what we have courts for at the end of the day, and so hopefully these disputes could be resolved there. Getting the military to look and see how many or who should be here and who should not be here, it's going to be insanely inefficient and costly. So if you're prepared to destroy capital, and then that's a very good idea. Just deploy the military and look for every immigrant and try and get them out.
Yeah, and it's you cannot know where immigrants are, and it almost like has this almost dystopian vibe where it's like we're supposed to essentially, and I understand, whatever, you can have different disagreements on immigration, but just like the people here who have been here for so long, it has this dystopian vibe where you're supposed to like turn against them and report them to the military and that kind of thing. It's just like that's, I don't know. I think that's severe overreach.
Well, the big thing is that, say, habeas corpus prevents the military from being deployed domestically. So I guess that's going to play a large factor in how big their involvement can be. The libs will probably equivalent this to, say, ethnic cleansing, even though it's going to affect illegal immigrants no matter what their race, whether from Ireland, which actually does have, we do have many illegal immigrants from Ireland, and other countries. So really broad mix of things, but they'll conflate it with something bigger than it really is.
I'm not sure how much I have to add on that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the wording really matters. I think what matters is like what's actually happening, and what's actually happening is you're having a bunch of people who have been here for a long time being deported, no matter how long they've been here, no matter whether they've committed a crime outside of initial entry, and I think that's immoral. But
Well,
anyway.
Tying into the immigration issue would be the cartels and their influence on the border, drug trafficking, and the like. So Trump wants to do an executive order that would designate them as foreign terrorist organizations. Does that make sense to you guys?
Crime should be held. I don't. When it comes to these gangs, I don't think that the military being deployed is the answer to this. We have police for a reason, and if we enforce the laws, then I think that's going to be the best way to do it. And it needs to be as simple as we have a culture here and we have laws here, and they need to be respected if you're going to be here. And if not, then you're not going to come. So if we have a simple, if we make it simple, but if we make it easy to understand, and we have a culture that is going to be respected, then I think that is going to be a conducive way to these types of issues.
Holden, what is having a culture that like people who come here respecting our culture? What does that entail?
It means that like here, It means here we celebrate certain things, such as it means our culture would be in the United States. We don't like communism. We don't like in the United States. We celebrate freedom. We celebrate property rights. We celebrate those sorts of things, and we speak a certain language. We don't violate other property rights. Is what it's gonna come down to.
I just like question how you litigate that. Like, how do you make it so only the people who come here believe a certain thing?
I'm not saying that's like a litigation thing. I think it's more of a cultural thing.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think like making it so only people who speak English can come here, like that's an especially.
No, I never said that. I'm not saying if you don't have to speak English to come. You just have to learn the language. That's all I'm saying. So what I'm saying is that if we have a culture here that is robust, then those sorts of things are just going to happen on their own. You don't need legislation for it. And I'm not advocating any legislation really for this, except for criminals. But yeah.
The point I want to make on the border and the drug cartels is that over 80% of the people who traffic drugs across the U.S. border are U.S. citizens. So over 80% are U.S. citizens. I think that this is definitely targeting, like, obviously, yeah, the cartel is a problem, but the fact that it's only the cartel, we're never talking about anything else. We're never talking about how to address this in any other way, bringing more tech to the border maybe. It's always, we have to go after the cartel, especially as a foreign terrorist organization. I mean, that, like Holden kind of hinted to, that kind of implies we're going to use the military. So, like, I just question, why is it this hyperfixation on this one entity or on, illegal aliens, when we just need stronger border security generally to stop this, because U.S. citizens are doing it 4 times more.
I guess I would question, say, how well tied in those U.S. citizens are to those cartels and how much they're working with them. Because that's definitely a question I have. Do you know by any chance?
I'm not sure. I mean, I would assume if they're U.S. citizens, then they probably had to go through several background checks. I mean, the system's already, complicated enough as it is. So I would doubt that anyone who is a U.S. citizen is doing that. But obviously, stuff's going to slip through the cracks. We might, lower that to 70%, whatever. I mean, it's still a vast majority.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then regarding, say, some of the other executive orders, certainly plenty on the table. Something that you guys might like is a hiring freeze for federal employees. Does that sound appealing? I mean, given the state of the bureaucracy, how large it is,
Yes.
how expansive it is, like, that
Yes.
makes sense.
Yes.
I think we can.
No more bureaucrats. We need a massive firing spree across the board.
Yeah. The issue also isn't just that we have so many employees. It's that the employees that we do have are so inefficient. Obviously, we should not have nearly as many employees, but like the work that a lot of federal bureaucrats do is so minimal, and it's like all it takes is one glance to see that this is way overdone. Most of these agencies could probably use an 80% cut to their workforce, and they would be just as efficient.
Right. It's not run with efficiency in mind. And I think there's that old saying regarding how money is spent. For instance, when you spend your own money on yourself, it's most efficient. When you spend other people's money on other people, it's least efficient.
Right.
Now, big thing here is that Vivek, he was supposed to partner with Elon Musk on Doge for cutting government and working on that partnership. But he's exiting that to likely run for governor of Ohio. Do you think that will affect the progress of it, or can Elon handle it on his own?
It was a phony department to start with. It wasn't going to do anything really. So it's like an advisory board. I mean, that's what Doge was. I mean, it sounded great. Reagan had something similar back when he ran. I mean, he ran on cutting the Department of Energy. It never happened. And we've gotten the we want to cut government talk many times before, and this is no different. You got a phony department. They say they want to cut government. They're not going to cut government. I'm thinking of an example we shouldn't probably say on this podcast.
Well, don't you think that it might be appropriate to have a committee that organizes and looks at, okay, what should we cut, what shouldn't we cut, and how can we cut it. I
Go
think that
go to the Mises Institute. They've got stuff on there that recommends what we should cut, what we shouldn't cut. Huron Brook and the Ayn Rand Institute have plenty of good literature on what we should and shouldn't, what we should and should cut, and how we should do it. Like literally hours long form videos and many articles explaining how he would deregulate the financial industry, how he would cut Social Security, how he would cut Medicare, how he would deregulate the U.S. healthcare system. There's plenty of stuff out there. It's just, are you going to do it? So I think a good way to start with is just to start. If it's not listed inside of the United States Constitution, get rid of it. Very simple. That's a good way to start. And then you could, so that automatically will get rid of Social Security essentially, and Medicare, and virtually all the welfare programs. I mean, there's like 200 welfare programs or something. If we could ease out those, then that would be a good start.
And also cutting down a lot on our military is very important as well. But another thing is, like, even in the Constitution, if we could just cut out anything that enforces eminent domain, that would be great.
Yeah, eminent domain is some communist crap. Let's get rid of that.
definitely got to look at Article 1, Section 8 and see, what can the federal government do and what can't it do. That's the key. Got to really be analyzing what the government's role is there.
Yeah.
But closing thoughts from either of you.
I mean, it seems like Trump's basically doing the same thing that every other president in the past 20, 30 years has, maybe more so 20, which is he's going to use a lot of executive action to get what he wants done. And overall, I'm not surprised by any of this. It seems very Trumpy. It seems like this is what I would have expected. So nothing out of the ordinary, but nothing super exciting either.
Gotcha. Holden?
Yeah, I mean, I just expect government to grow. So government will grow. The state will get bigger. Under Trump, government spending went up. Under Trump, government jobs went up. And so I expect that to happen. Now, the one positive thing about Trump is his energy. So maybe we'll get some good things to happen out of energy, but virtually everything else, I'm expecting very bad things, including tariffs. I think I think he's pretty serious about that. It's one of the only consistent positions Trump has had is his tariffs. So I expect that to happen. And I expect the economy to suffer because of those tariffs.
And we've certainly debated the tariffs before, though looking at the size of government, I'm optimistic. I think that he'll cut it. I think that good things are to come in that regard. But that being said, thanks everyone so much for watching. We really appreciate it. We upload 3 times a week. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you have any questions for us, feel free to reach out at youthbombs@alaturalrepublicans.com. Thanks so much, everyone.